let's do it over again in order to see how close the groups.
So what's a brain dot?
It virtually kind of represents the interlinked tadpoles.
Can disappear and then
yeah. Right.
So you don't need to like set up on the
I really like the way that you sort of created your edges on the projection. I don't know, I just really like the softness of it. I think it's a really great sort of solution to kind of the typical projected box. And I think it really sort of addresses this composition really well.
Does this sound also like reacting to the sensor?
Exactly. That's the direction point is on.
I find this piece really poetic. And what do you really want to say from this piece? Like,
Can you say that?
Yeah, because the gesture you did to interact with all this wood, it's like you step on them.
Yeah.
It's like kill them.
No,
because
it's like a.
if you step on the temple, it's basically.
No, it's like a virtually kind of recreating the swamp of tadpoles. It's just kind of like a stepping on some kind of swamp leaves. Yeah.
Yeah, but for this now, I feel when you do the performance to show us how you interact with it, you're like doing this. It's a little bit like crucial for the scenes here, and also connect with your content. The concept is like stepping on these animals.
Yeah.
Their swords flying there or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit. Maybe you can make it a little bit higher. So audience can touch it instead of step on them. The touch is more soft, more like care about these things. And once I touch it, it's like I care about the animal, wildlife, and then just help them to more babies or something like that. But the gesture is totally different.
Yeah.
I don't know, to me, like, the way I'm reading it is kind of like you're making sort of like this approximation of like, I guess like a pond or something like that.
Exactly, yeah.
And to me, like as someone's walking through this, it's almost as though they're like wading through the pond. And so, yeah, this format to me is a little strange. It might be interesting if like these are kind of things that you like bump into, like your leg bumps into. I don't know, like I've waded through ponds that have like huge swarms of tadpoles everywhere, and you can kind of feel them knocking on your shins and on your legs and things like that. I don't know, to me there's like tadpoles like visually and sort of phenomenologically like bring about such a visceral experience, like especially with the video that you showed of like all the tadpoles all together and moving. There's something, to me there's something like missing there. Like there's something that just sort of takes me away from tadpoles. So I think like this on its own, I don't think needs to sort of bear the image of tadpole, but I think if you're going for that experience of a tadpole, I think there's maybe some other aspects that you might consider in terms of like how people are causing this to react.
Yeah, I also think it's part of like what I struggle with like the shapes is there's kind of like a lack of specificity. So I don't know. Like at first I thought maybe it's supposed to be tadpole, but I think it's supposed to be like maybe plants in the pond, like. And I think that my fear result if there was maybe more specificity in the projection or in the ground. Like you don't necessarily need to make them both, but I think having one to kind of tie it in a bit more.
And when people like interact with all these things, because the location of projector also casts a shadow on the wall, so it's also part of your project because the human shadow in the temple world.
Yeah.
But if you want to locate it at higher place, so it won't have the, oh, it still have.
Yeah, that's what I initially.
Yeah, so you can also consider how to interact with humans' body shape, shadow.
Right.
Can you see your?
Pretty sure.
It's the same as the.
Yeah. I prepared this one in order to clarify my original point in terms of addressing clear way.
I think the other thing that kind of like takes me away from tadpole a little bit is like, I don't know. To me, like it's hard for me to like remove the image of like the video that you showed from my head.
Yeah. Totally.
And so like the music that's happening, like to me, I'm sort of picturing this in the context of like nature film. And so this music makes me sort of imagine a space where like that kind of music would be played during like a nature film. And I don't know, do you consider that video as kind of like a primary subject for this? So I don't know, thinking about like how the music sort of reflects like the sort of nature of the image is definitely something to consider, because to me in that image like there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of sort of like furling and unfurling, glistening little tadpoles everywhere. And to me like this music is very serene, so like to me I start to kind of like think of it more I don't know, in sort of like a reflective space or something like that. Like to me there like at this point in the film like something like the narrative is progressing some way where you're sort of starting to close in on a single subject, or you're like talking about like motherhood or fatherhood. Like that's the type of sort of thing that I'm taking from the music. Whereas if you're more focused on the formal qualities of the way that the bodies are sort of touching and furling and things like that, I think the music could change a little bit. It could be something a little bit faster paced, or something a little bit odd, something a little bit precarious, maybe.
Another thing to think about, I think I also asked this question before, is what do you expect audience to get after they interact with this? Because for me, I feel like when I step on this part, I know, oh, there's more temple there, more there. Oh, if I step on this, where should it be next? So I just kind of think about this, but after I experiment with all this, I feel, oh, it's a sculpture that, it's an installation that can give me more tempo every time I step on it. But I just feel not really into the atmosphere you create. So what do you expect audience to get from this? Just a playful or?
I think it's between playfulness and metaphorically some sort of abstract feeling upon some sort of collective movements of tadpoles. Kind of, yeah, it's hard to say. It might sound pretty ambiguous, but yeah, that's my initial reference point.
Yeah, I feel because you use this huge space and also project on both sides of the wall and also the floor, you can make audience more like sink into the world you create, sink into this. It's more like immersive feeling for the audience. That would be better. But when I into this It's more like small game. I'm looking for, oh, where's a temple? Where is it? But don't have the feeling, oh, they're around me. That really I'm making their better or worse. So if you can like figure out that feeling.
I really find it clearly it's visually compelling, and I can see the elements from the aquascape, the lines that you created graphically here, drawing up the sunlight, which probably is where you're headed here. And certainly the music, it captured the essence of what you might think about in terms of tadpoles, birth, development, innocence, playfulness, as you said. And I think some of the comments earlier, reflecting on those, the interface, it's an interesting thing to think about because, when you tap one of those, it's almost about release, right? There's an element of release that happens there. And I'm thinking about what other ways if you want to be literal about this, the idea of being able to, swipe a mass of tadpoles when they're still almost ready to burst out and allow that to happen suggests to me that there may be some other interesting things to explore, some kind of some of this motion activated, as you move through the space, if there are pedestals or spaces where you can move through, as if you're actually doing that, releasing something that corresponds to that. As another alternative to actually physically pressing on something could be really interesting and perhaps engage somebody in a very poetic and a type of poetic movement that I think might mirror what you've captured, what you've done in the video itself. So it's interesting to think.
Yeah.
I feel, yes, because before that, I feel when you step on this, it's like kill them, but also it's kind of like release something. Because every time you step on it, there will be more on the screen, on the wall. So maybe you can make this kind of release movement more clear. Like when I step on this, I can see something just come from the location and stuff.
Sounds pretty interesting.
Yes, and also in some country, I know in like Buddha religion, believe something, they just release some animals to the nature, like occasionally. So it's more like give back to nature or something. I don't know. It's more another culture, but
It's
you
like
can,
releasing tadpoles, kind of.
Yeah, tadpole or small fish or birds back to nature. So like making something good for nature. So it's more like, treat animal in a good way. So you can release it and make it more dramatically for the audience.
Yeah,
so they
that
can,
definitely makes sense.
Yeah. So, but in that way, we may need to do some mapping or set up the location. Yeah. And that will be more, make audience more feel like they are in this world, they are interact directly with this, not just finding where I interact with.
Yeah.
Because in the same way for me, if, imagine being in the water and having bioluminescence, as you move your hands through the water, light is released essentially. And that's kind of what you've created here. It's more way on this one, that contemplative movement through the space in order to energize that and actually become part of it. Interesting.
Yeah, I think also sort of the topic of release. I think the audio, like there's kind of like a singleness of subject to the sound. Like we're hearing kind of like a single piano solo for the most part. And if you were to kind of like look at the audio and find moments where like the sound feels kind of multiple, like I don't know, like the way that a school of fish sounds when they're like swimming past or something like that. Like there's kind of like that build up and there's kind of like more of that ambient noise that implies like more than one subject. So I don't know, maybe like you touch one of these and there's some kind of sound that implies like something more is here, something else is coming to the party, you know, like might be one way to look at it.
I
think there's one thing is so important of this kind of interaction is that your interaction should be the audience should be so careful not to step on the.
Because it's, yeah.
The
And I
water.
have to, yeah.
Yeah. So this kind of the interaction is correct. So I should carefully step on these instead of these.
But
because-
theoretically,
Yeah.
it's gonna replace
Yeah.
into thicker and harder.
Right, I
yeah.
know, yeah. So, but in this situation, the audience will just go here and carefully step on this. So it's totally opposite the interaction itself. So, I mean, the different kind of interface creates different kind of interaction. Just be careful playing with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I think the composition of these blues, I feel like it's too much at this time because it's so many and some of them is not functional. And the size of the wood and also the size of the temple on the wall, that the size are similar. I don't know whether your intention to make this way, but I think if you just make the size a little bit different, just separate them a little bit, might be good. And also, this kind of scale, maybe you could make it bigger, like right feet for the foot or something, just make it larger. And yeah, I think that there are two.
Actually, that's the far that I can,
Yeah.
make it, yeah.
Yeah. I think the aesthetic here is totally working and it looks good. Yeah. Just a little bit of details that you could
Yeah,
just,
totally agree.
yeah, think more later.
And also, if you ever like have the opportunity to use a projector that gives you a little bit more resolution, it might sort of reinforce kind of like the dreamy, like feeling of the audio. Because I think what the projector's kind of doing to it is, I don't know, like in there, it's kind of like making like noise, where it should just be kind of like straight lines. So, like not that that's something you can do anything about right now, but I think it'd be nice to see it with a like higher resolution projector if you ever get a chance to do that. It might be an interesting experiment with the setup.